The Anthem VIP demo is now live, and players all over are trying to jump inside a javelin, soar above that gorgeous world, and see what this game is all about, and if it will live up to the hype and be a saving grace for BioWare. But that exploration has been plagued by a plethora of issues, including infinite loads and connection errors, causing quite a hiccup for Anthem's opening salvo. How much will this affect the final full release, and should it? That's what we're exploring today. What's going on, everybody? It's GhostRobo, and I had a chance to play a bunch of Anthem up at EA Redwood Shores. We had a pretty perfect scenario there where the servers were just great and everything worked according to plan, but when you unleash this thing out to the public, there are bound to be issues. There have been quite a few. I've seen many a player discuss their issues and frustrations over Twitter and YouTube, and it's definitely starting to affect overall impressions of the game. And BioWare has clearly taken note of this problem as they issued a response today. And I gotta say that these responses from companies, this clarity and transparency that we're seeing developers have in these exchanges with fans, it's pretty cool. Nintendo did a solid by just coming out and saying, hey, this is exactly what's going on with Metroid Prime 4. It's not ready. It's not going to be ready. We're giving it to Retro Studios. Thanks for your patience. You won't hear anything for a long time, but at least they were open and honest. And so the head of live services over at BioWare, Chad Robertson, is trying to do something similar. And he goes through the problems that the game has come up against and what they're going to do to solve them and how they're going to reward players for being patient. So he first off says that server capacity is not an issue. He wants to dispel the fact that they weren't prepared. And this is the first thing that comes to mind anytime you have a demo or a beta go bad. It's like, how could they not have been ready? How did they not know? How many games have gone through this exact same scenario and nobody learns? But apparently BioWare and EA did learn. They said that they had plenty of servers. They still have an excess of servers so that they're ready for player increases and to provide an experience for players, but there are other issues, obviously, that are limiting that. And he goes through the three big ones. First up is platform connections. He says this was caused by the spike in players entering the game when we opened up. Unfortunately, these issues did not present themselves during our internal testing. Investigations are ongoing, and we will continue to apply fixes throughout the weekend. He then discusses entitlements, which are account flags that grant players things like their pre-order incentives and demo access, and apparently a very specific combination of these entitlements is causing a complete blockage of the demo for some players. That to me is insanely frustrating. If you're one that is affected by this, I'm so sorry, because it's one thing to have an infinite load, it's one thing to have a crash, but blocked access, that's really upsetting. But he says that thankfully they've resolved most of these cases. There's a few additional ones that they're still working on, but it seems like that is going to be remedied pretty quickly. Now, the third is the infinite loads, which I've seen pop up all over, people talking about these infinite loads. And apparently it mainly occurs in the transition from Fort Tarsis, which is the base, out to an expedition/mission. He says that they saw this in isolated cases during their own testing, but they thought that they had resolved it. And apparently this problem is exacerbated in the real world, where differences with players, ISPs, and home networks introduce new behavior. Now, the cool part of this conversation is what comes next. He talks about their top priorities and what they're doing to fix this. He says, number one, they're going to continue to resolve any reports of issues with login and entitlement problems. Good. So the first priority is complete blockage, as it should be. Number two, they're going to implement fixes to address the infinite loads. He says, I want to be upfront that this is a difficult one and something we may not resolve this weekend. Many players are not seeing this issue, and the last thing we want to do is destabilize the experience for everyone. So that sounds like it might not get the band-aid it needs. They're going to try, but pulling something a little too far on this end might cause a problem on that end, and then maybe you just have an even bigger issue that affects more players. And as frustrating as infinite loads are, probably not something that they can get done in a day or so. And at least he's really upfront about that. Number three, he says they're going to improve server performance. We've heard reports of rubber banding and other signs of server latency. We believe we can address this and will be conducting some small-scale experiments to confirm that. We may roll some fixes out this weekend or may wait for the open demo next weekend, depending on the level of risk to the overall service. He then goes on to tout how they have seen a lot of love for the game and that their numbers on Twitch, over 300,000 concurrent viewers yesterday, over 100 million minutes watch, is very, very humbling and heartwarming to them. I will note that as of this recording, Anthem has fallen below Resident Evil 2 on Twitch, which is a little worrisome to me. In fact, it is currently at a third of what Resident Evil 2 is at on Twitch, and not that that is going to be the defining factor for a game, but it's a little concerning. So Chad finishes off by saying, hey, we appreciate everyone's patience and sincerely apologize for those who have had issues getting into the game, and as a token of appreciation for your enthusiasm and any issues you encountered, we're giving everyone who participated in the VIP demo weekend an additional new vinyl at launch. And it's a pretty sweet green and black skin slash sticker slash decal vinyl that you apply to your Javelin. They look really nice, especially on the Storm and the Interceptor. So what do I think of all of this, and how much will it affect the game? There seems to be just a lot of bad luck going on with these betas lately, and some are able to nail it, but in general, I don't like that the online issues so dramatically seem to affect the overall experience of the game, because to me they're separate. So you have Anthem the game, which I think is very good, and now I'm not trying to be apologetic for the fact that they don't have the servers and they don't have the online experience working properly. They absolutely should, and if they can't, then yeah, it's not worth buying. But assuming that they are able to get that stuff going, even though it is a critical piece of the puzzle, I really hope that it doesn't bleed into affecting how people perceive Anthem as the game. And it's hard to separate the two, but the experience of flying above these beautiful worlds and partaking in pretty cool missions where you are able to implement a lot of cool combat moves, variety, abilities. It would really suck if this was a death knell for a game that is, for the most part, doing a lot right. I really like what Anthem has put together. Do I think it's a perfect package? No. Do I think it is the next coming of the next big, incredible, industry overtaking title? No. But I think they've put together a really nice game that has a nice differentiating factor in that flight mechanic. And that really does a whole lot for me in a world where online open shooters with friends all start to feel pretty similar. And, you know, BioWare, they nailed the mechanics. I think they really hit a home run with the actual gameplay. The way that everything controls and feels is fantastic. Now, the story may not be as strong as I'd like given their pedigree, and we'll have to wait and discuss the endgame at a later date. But it's really rough to see Anthem, unfortunately, swallowing a real tough pill before it's even ready to go, and it makes you wonder, how beneficial are these demos? How beneficial are these betas? I look back at a game like Titanfall, and I can't help but draw parallels. I mean, they're both EA projects. Titanfall was a really cool game that, not necessarily because of problems in the beta or the demo, but the beta and the demo, at least in some part, contributed to that game never gaining the foothold that it needed. Now, it still sold pretty darn well, and they were able to make Titanfall 2, and I loved Titanfall 2 in spite of it being even less of a success. But I hope that this is not the case for Anthem. I don't want any game to bite the dust before it even releases. How do you feel about these betas and demos having a significant impact on the overall impression of the game? And how do you feel about Chad's response? Because I think going out there and being upfront and apologizing and being honest, that in theory should do a lot. Look how well it worked for Nintendo. They basically said, hey, Metroid Prime 4, a game that we unveiled 2 E3s ago that people have been waiting for years, possibly the most anticipated property that Nintendo has not put out on a home console in forever, we had to completely scrap it and redo, and it will not be ready for years. They came out and said that, and because of the way in which they handled themselves, they received nothing but positive feedback. Everybody seems to be happy with it. Now, they had the nice added kicker of, hey, we're giving it to Retro, who you probably wanted to develop the game in the first place, even if it's not really the same people. It's a great PR move to have Retro, and I wonder if they did not have that Retro mention, if their little message would have been received very differently. Anthem is giving you a skin, they're apologizing, they are appreciative, and they're telling you exactly what went wrong and why, and I think that transparency, maybe it's not as hoorah as what Nintendo did, but I love that we're seeing that right now from developers and game makers. I hope that that continues. I think it's very important to be upfront with your fans. I think it's very important to go into detail. I like reading this and seeing exactly what's going on, how they plan to fix it, if they will. you know, it's one thing to say we're investigating issues, but that is the rote response we get all over. Twitter, email, forums, the website. So having something that is more granular and gives us more of an explanation, as well as a plan for the future, I think that's a big deal. And I hope that it goes at least a decent way towards elevating the impressions of the game, because once you're in there, the people I've talked to seem to really like it. It's just frustrating when you can't get in, or when you're getting disconnected and losing what you've gained. I get it. That's really upsetting. And it'll be interesting to see in the coming weeks, leading up to Anthem's launch, how much this hiccup of an opening salvo affects the final product known as Anthem. Let me know your take in the comments down below, everybody. I'll keep you posted if there's any new updates from BioWare and how things shape out. I got a lot more Anthem coverage and footage coming on the channel. We're continuing the walkthrough. I posted my 5 favorite features, the 6 things I think might cause some problems for the game, and we'll get into late game stuff as soon as we can. In the meantime, everybody, have a fantastic day. Thanks so much for watching. Drink some hot chocolate. Till next time, we will see you all later.